You're good.
We're going to get started. Commissioner Dixon is actually joining us by the cloud, and Commissioner Strauss is out of town. So, welcome to the December 14, 2011 Board of Commissioners meeting of the Portland Development Commission. Tracy, please call the roll.
Commissioner Dixon?
Here.
Commissioner Mullis?
Present, and very pleased to see Chair Andrews back with the gavel in his hand.
Commissioner Strauss? Commissioner Hoyt?
Here.
Chair Andrews?
Here.
I heard you were exceptional and quite a threat.
He's always exceptional and quite a threat.
I was very brief with my comments.
All right. First item, Commissioner reports. It's been a month, but it's been a relatively quiet month. I held a brown bag lunch for staff, which was well attended, and I enjoyed, and I think it's something that we will be doing as commissioners on a regular basis so that staff here have an opportunity to meet with us and ask questions directly and find out how bad we are at whatever sport it is that we play. We did the board retreat. Thank you for all of your attendance for more than a half a day. I think we accomplished a lot, and that is the beginning of our budget process for next year. Seems like we just finished it, but here we go again. Attended the Rose Quarter Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. That's continuing to move forward, as is the Memorial Coliseum renovation, Veterans Memorial Coliseum program. And I also had a full day trip down to Central Point to meet Dennis Richardson and have a very brief talk about the Oregon Sustainability Center. We're continuing to work on that as well. That kept me busy. How about you, Charles? Anything for the cause today?
Oh, nothing of note to report. I actually spent the better part of the last month doing my job. So it's an unusual month. It's pretty dedicated, but no, I don't have anything of note to report.
Aneshka, Commissioner Dixon.
Hi, speaking from the clouds here. I had the opportunity of attending our kickoff meeting for the Neighborhood Economic Development Leadership Advisory Group on November 18th. Seems like such a long time ago, but it was after our last board meeting. And in brief, this strategy is going to add significant depth and direction to the city's neighborhood business vitality, which is in line with our City of Portland's 5-year economic development strategy. And it's going to be a community-driven approach to successfully position neighborhoods, local businesses, and their residents to connect to and compete in the regional economy. And I think it's really important that we're promoting this very important effort. We want to make sure that the implementation process, reflects community priorities, and it's going to strengthen communities from within. I think it's a really exciting approach to economic development, and I'm pleased to be a small part of it. The first meeting was very well attended. There were lots of participants from the public, and the advisory committee is made up of a very diverse and well-rounded members from within our community. So I'm really pleased to be a part of this, like I said, and I want to thank all those members that are going to be taking time out of their busy lives to support this very important effort. And other than that, enjoyed our board retreat, and I'm so glad we're starting the new budget season here at PDC.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thanks for your help on that important project.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Mullis.
Just a couple of things. And Chair Andrews has spoken very clearly a meeting or two ago about the evolving mission of the PDC, and the board retreat, I think, really gave us a good opportunity to get real deep into that and have some very good, serious discussions. So that was time well spent. And I spent Monday at the Oregon Business Plan Leadership Summit at the Oregon Convention Center, and both of our U.S. senators was there, the governor was there, lots of the leading business folks, and just doing a look back to the past year. What have we done right? What have we accomplished? What do we still need to do? So very well attended, and a lot of good ideas being discussed, and good plans to move us forward into the next year. So thank you.
Executive Director Quinton.
Thank you very much, Chair Andrews. Good afternoon, Commissioners. It has been almost a month since our last board meeting, so we continue to roll along. And I too was at the Oregon Business Plan Leadership Summit on Monday as well, and was able to participate in panel discussions relating to our athletic and outdoor industry, as well as the growing priority around entrepreneurship and innovation. And I think what's great is to see that the attention that we've been paying to these issues is also growing at the state level. And so I think there's growing alignment around these topics. And the governor delivered a great speech that characterized his priorities around job creation. And I think our work certainly is aligned with where the state is going. And along those lines, I know that you'll hear about this later today, about our export plan, which is kind of one of the tenets of our economic strategy going forward. I had the good fortune of going to Washington after our last board meeting and presenting our strategy, our draft strategy that you'll hear about today, before first our three other cities that are participating with us, and then on the second day with the other federal agencies. And it was a great opportunity to show the great work that is going on in Portland. And so when you see the presentation today from Chris Harder, I think what you'll see is one of the leading plans that's being developed as part of this initiative. So there's a lot of great work is happening on that effort. We had a number of industry events over the course of the past month. We had a summit of all of our folks in the manufacturing industry in early November. About 500 folks showed up. I participated in the Software Association's annual meeting and event. It was an evening event, probably about 125 software folks. Treasurer Wheeler spoke to this group as well about the state's plans for getting their own business investment tools aligned. We hosted the athletic and outdoor industry at our own event last week on the east side. We probably had about 150 people there, another great event for us. And then the Oregon film industry, which we also support here through a staff person on our business and industry division, had their annual meeting and event on Monday night, and they had probably a couple hundred people there. And that, I think it's been a record year for the Oregon and Portland film industry with all the different productions happening here, Portlandia, Grimm, and Leverage, and also the film productions that are happening here. So a lot going on that front. I think last time we mentioned that Solar Power, one of our big recruitment successes for the year, was having a job fair. They had that job fair last month. I think they had a couple hundred people show up for that. So hopefully we'll see a lot of local hires come out of that event. And then the week after Thanksgiving, I was invited to participate in a community forum regarding our Bureau of Transportation's plans to improve the bike infrastructure along North Williams. And that whole topic has become a kind of a hot button issue for the neighborhood. And so it was great to see the city, in this case a sister bureau of ours, the Bureau of Transportation, put a pause on their project, take a step back, and we had a community forum with about 200 people in the room. They specifically wanted people like the mayor and myself and the head of transportation and planning to be there and to listen. So I was not asked to say a word. I was asked to be there for the event and listen to the concerns of the community around what it means to be living in an evolving community where it's become a very popular area for new residents and for people on bikes, but there's still obviously a lot of residents who've lived there a long time and don't feel like they've had a say in how the neighborhood is evolving. And so I think it was a lot of constructive feedback came out of that, but I think it was also a great lesson once again in how we need to go about our work in neighborhoods. And Commissioner Dixon's role on the Neighborhood Economic Development Leadership Group is I think an example of how we're trying to chart a new course in our neighborhood work, one that's driven by the community and the city is being responsive to community needs. And then the last thing, I just want to make sure you're all aware that we are having our PDC holiday event on next week, Wednesday morning, the 21st at 9 a.m. I think you're all invited. We're going to be, the leadership team is going to be serving breakfast, and then I think there's going to be a special visit from Santa. So you're all welcome to attend. So thanks.
Thank you, Patrick. And I follow Patrick on Twitter, so I know that you've been attending a lot of events on our behalf. You can follow Patrick on Twitter too.
I don't think I know your Twitter name yet, so I'd like to follow you now too.
I keep that a secret. Okay. Thank you.
Sorry. I just remembered something. It was on one of my lists. Our newest employee just walked in the door, and I wanted to introduce him. His name is Jared Weiner. He is now a member of our business and industry team. He comes to us from North Carolina. Lots of experience on economic development issues. He's going to be working with Chris Harder, who you'll see in a minute, but working around our software industry, our research and commercialization work, as well as our entrepreneurship agenda. So another great hire for us and significantly increases our capacity on the business and industry team. So welcome, Jared.
Welcome, Jerry. Have we been recruiting actively in North Carolina lately?
We have some key folks who have connections down there. So.
Okay, next item are the meeting minutes for the November 9th, 2011 meeting. There were some very slight revisions to what was in your packet there at your table. I spent some time looking for the differences. I couldn't even find them, so they must have been grammatical, more or less. So I would look for a motion to approve.
I was absent, so I probably shouldn't.
So moved. Move to approve.
Could I get a second, Aneshka?
I second.
Thank you. Any changes, additions, comments? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Minutes are passed. Okay. Next is public comments for items not on the agenda. We do have Mary Ann Schwab has signed up to testify. Welcome.
It's kind of nippy out there.
It is very cold out there.
Not a fun place to come park with all the parking lots full.
Yeah, we all had a hard time finding. We all had to give up our parking places due to budget concerns this year, so finding them for us wasn't easy either.
Yeah. Well, I'm Mary Ann Schwab. I'm a concerned citizen who is monitoring the levees with the PDC for a number of years now, starting with the Burnside Bridgehead project. I was one of the nucleus with the Burnside A Friend group. Mike Whitmore cannot be here today, but he had some concerns as well. And we'd just kind of like to review the public involvement piece. And please bear with me. I'll be as quick as I can. I'm concerned reading the last minutes, and I've asked somebody to please share them with you, and so that I can go down with what my concerns are. Number one, we did get them in a timely fashion. A 4-day notice. However, the budget was not attached to those minutes. You cannot expect volunteers in the community and business people to prove your forecast without knowing exactly what happened to the preceding forecast, how those dollars were spent. I want to know, for example, in 2004, we did the Holman building. Everything baseline in this room is job creation with the economic development. How many jobs are there today as a result of the money we invested? Then I go down in the minutes, and big red flag regarding the Crescent Park being transferred for $100K to Parks at a time when Commissioner Fish, is absolutely closing public restrooms in all our parks. We own the land. One more time, I'm asking one more intergovernmental agency. How is it that the publicly owned land is sold, publicly owned land in the commons, is sold to another government agency for another public use? And we need some glossary of terms here. What are public-private partnerships? When we read in the paper, and I'll list 3, in addition to the Holman, when we had the windmill come out and there was a $14 million, was that a letter of understanding? Was that a contract? $14 million, 14 millions, no interest, no payment, 14 years out? Whoa. And we have others that we read in the paper. I'm very confused with that term. And when we transfer, what are we transferring? And it's public-private partnership. Who really benefits? When we worked so hard, I was in this very room a number of years ago begging you to have public toilet, showers, and washing facilities for the homeless down here. But I'm running out of time and I can't even get through these minutes. And you're so packed in here. This clock is ticking away, and I apologize for that. Your staff did alert everyone on the committee that this was a very urgent meeting and to please come. They were going to prioritize this. And yet when I look at the attendance, we don't even have quorum. They're asking to review a budget with 4 days' notice without the budget. There's something wrong with this process. Back to the job creations. I want to know what we're getting for our dollars. I want to know how many of these jobs, whether it be at the stadium, we're still paying for what do you call that stadium up there? We switched and lost our baseball field. We didn't pay for the first remodel, and now we're paying for a second one. This has got to stop. Who's monitoring to this? Who is enforcing these contracts? How can you legally sign a contract that you know is wrong? I'm just questioning what's happening to our public land and the transparency. And back to Washington High School. We're very concerned in Washington High School that we worked very hard to get an underground parking structure. Our CAC, I was on that committee as well. We had planned 6 months ago 66 underground parking spaces. That is huge. Why can't we really pay attention to Washington High School? Get those 66 underground parking spaces, knowing Art DeMiro is going to be having workforce housing with 60 units. His number is up so that he could pencil out. The same neighborhood has land, 1.66 acres by David W., who is now working for the school district. They want to sell that land. Why can't PDC and Metro and the intergovernmental agencies work together to keep that land open and not put more low-income housing in that neighborhood on a TriMet bus line that doesn't require with the comp plan to have on-site parking? One more little wrinkle in this little neighborhood. St. Francis Playground Park is pending sale and plans to sell. They're all parishes are independent corporations now. Women 55 and older desperately need housing. And when we had shovel-ready money, this group and agency considered tearing down the Convention Plaza. But thanks to Bruce Warner and Michael Whitmore, that didn't happen. And Brad Molson, the three of them worked together to keep the building as is, and those shovel-ready dollars were shifted to the Hoyt. So the men have their resource center. But there's all of these little inequities. And I just want to call your attention to those few. And I really want Washington High School to be finished and constructed before I leave the planet. And I'm told with the last meeting, it won't be another 10 to 15 years out. And in 10, 15 years out, with St. Francis getting low-income housing and the school district possibly selling land, we are not helping our neighborhoods. We're destroying it. No matter what you do with streetcars, whatever. And the last point I want to make is that business people downtown are giving their employees bus passes to come to work. We've got garages down there. Maybe we need to readdress the charges, those monthly fees, because people are parking in Kearns, Buckman, Hand, even in my neighborhood, and then jump on the bus and go downtown. We can't have that. We need to be a little more courteous to our neighbors, whether they work downtown or wherever. Thank you. Please, I want to know in the past and with these budgets, you can't interpret them. I want to make sure that every time I see one, I see my little, just a shade under $1 million is still floating for my project. That's going to be sitting there 10 to 15 years out. And I'd like to know if we can really figure out how these contracts are getting signed, how this is happening.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I have a surprise for you. I didn't wear my Santa hat, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So a lot of topics, some of them actually not having anything to do with PDC, and I'd like to suggest, Marianne, that you set up a meeting with Steve and Keith, members of the staff, so that there's a proper amount of time to respond to your concerns.
Oh, and here's a piece of coal. You're stalking. Thank you for listening. I know I rambled. I'm like a sparkler. There's many, many issues. People are not here. I think I'm speaking for a lot of people that cannot be here, having meetings in the middle of the day when people that really are into this have full-time jobs. The elderly don't want to come out at night. And I realize many of you are volunteers just as I am a volunteer, and I too have served on many committees. It is a tough job. We can't be everything to everybody, but I think we need to know where we've been, let us know how the money was spent in the CES URAC, and know what our future is. And to read in the minutes here, that's why I gave them to you. When you read in the minutes and they say that you're going to make the decision, we're just rubber stamping what? It needs to be a little bit clearer, more transparent communication. Thank you.
Okay, regular agenda. Next item is an action item, Resolution 6909 and 6910, authorize Executive Director to approve Third Amendment to Station Place Disposition and Development Agreement with Hoyt Street Properties and Station Place Garage. The second resolution is to approve a parking agreement with the Pearl Hotel Investors, LLC. Mr. Shain and Katherine. Krajnak.
Chair, Commissioners, Executive Director, good afternoon. I'm Stephen Shain. I'm sitting here with Katherine Krajnak, who's been the project manager on this. Before we move forward on this project, I want to thank the amount of people that have been working on this. It's a fairly small project, but it's been a host of people that have concentrated in working on this, from Eric Iverson, Lisa Graham, Lou Bowers, Patrick, Jacob Fox. I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple of other people too, but there's been a tremendous amount of effort to move this project that is somewhat of a legacy from the start of the River District, moving it forward today. I'd like to introduce Katherine, who's going to go ahead and make the presentation.
So good afternoon, Commissioners and Executive Director Quinton. My name is Katherine Krajnak, and I'm a Project Program Coordinator at PDC. So we have two items for your consideration today. The first is the Third Amendment to the Disposition and Development Agreement for Station Place Redevelopment. And then the second is a parking agreement with Pearl Hotel Investors for 100 stalls in the Station Place Garage. So as Stephen said, this is a project that dates back to 2002 to the DDA for Station Place Redevelopment. And in that original DDA, there were 4 properties involved, and this is the 4th property of that DDA that has not been constructed upon. To the south of Lot 4, there is Lot 2, the site of the ZEBA World Headquarters, and then to the south of that is Lot 1, which is the Reach Housing Tower, and then Lot 3 is the Station Place Garage, which is owned and managed by PDC. Lot 4 was sold and conveyed to Hoyt Street Properties in April 2004, and the original program intended for that site was market rate housing with 30 units to be allocated as part of that project that were intended to be affordable to households at 120% median family income or below. That project did not move forward due to market conditions, and Hoyt Street Properties currently is under contract to sell with Pearl Hotel Investors for the construction of a hotel. So that brings us to the first item, which is the amendment to the DDA, which would change the current use from housing to hotel on that site. In addition, at the time that the original DDA was executed, PDC did not have a green building requirement. So this DDA amendment would update both the green building requirement and the current business and workforce equity policy. And additionally, it changes the schedule of performance, anticipating a completion date in June of 2015. And finally, the DDA amendment acknowledges the assignment of the rights and obligations under the previous DDA from Hoyt Street Properties to Pearl Hotel Investors, LLC. As housing was a part of this project, the 30 units under the previous DDA that obligation will be transferred to other Hoyt Street land, and that will be done via a separate agreement, which is the development agreement between Hoyt Street and the city. So Hoyt Street, under the development agreement, has a number of units at varying affordability levels. that they need to construct by certain time periods. And what this amendment allows is for that affordability requirement to be increased by 30 units at 120% MFI. Additionally, under that agreement, if Hoyt Street does not meet their affordable housing obligations, then the city has a right to purchase land for affordable housing given certain discounts under that agreement. And that original purchase right expires in 2012, and so we have also negotiated an extension to that repurchase rate until 2014. So the second item, the second resolution, is for a parking agreement with Pearl Hotel Investors LLC, and this would be for 100 stalls that would be made available for valet parking. And the term of the agreement would be for 10 years, and with HPI's right to extend for 4 10-year terms thereafter. And the rate for this would start at it's a market rate. It starts at the monthly rate for parking in the garage, and the parking spaces would be subject to annual increases of no less than 3% and no more than 6%. And they would the rate would only be increased if the monthly rate in the garage was above what the current rate was per the agreement. So finally, this project that we're bringing today provides a number of public benefits. First off, there is no hotel in the Pearl District, and we have heard that's been quite a desire for the neighborhood. It is a hotel that serves business visitors, so as we see office development built out in the Pearl, this will be an amenity for those office users. This project does support 200 construction jobs and about 67 permanent jobs, and also will be complying with PDC's business and workforce equity and green building policies. And finally, we want to emphasize that this project does not require any PDC funding, and in fact, it will produce revenue to PDC and its public partners in the form of parking, lodging taxes, city fees, permits, etc. So that concludes our presentation, and we're available for any questions.
Great, thank you. I also want to thank the staff that worked so diligently to get this done. This only came to us 6 weeks ago, something like that. I mean, it's been a really short time period to deal with a number of issues. I really appreciate the Hoyt Street partners recognizing our desire and need to keep the affordable requirement within the deal. It wasn't entirely clear to them at one point why it was so important to us, but we all know that our folks on the housing side would be disappointed if we didn't protect their interests, and we have. I thought I would point out, it shows in our packet, not only are we not subsidizing this particular project, and it really looks good in terms of going forward. They've hired an architect. They expect to actually break ground in early 2013, but the projected revenues for lodging taxes is $1 million a year. The projected property taxes is $385,000 a year. The city will collect about $2 million in development fees, and the parking revenue in a garage that's currently used at about 55%. Will start at $100,000 a year, which is a great result as well. Our company actually owns several parking garages downtown, and so I had an opportunity to help with the negotiation. And this agreement looks much like many others that we have. If there's a difference, it's longer, but they are building this hotel knowing that they've got this parking next door. There's no way that they could live without it. So it was a very important piece of the deal. So I think all the T's have been crossed and the I's are dotted. Great job. John, questions, comments?
No questions. Maybe just reiterate a couple of your remarks, and thanks to the staff, and appreciate a project like this coming forward at this point in time. We need these type of developments, and I know Commissioner Dixon and I in our briefing on Tuesday just wanted to make sure that the housing component was being adequately protected. And I don't want to speak for her, but I think that I know that I feel that it is, and I think that's very important. So I'm glad that's part of the deal, and that these folks agreed to that. So thank you.
Commissioner Dixon?
Thank you, John. You can totally speak for me sometimes. I completely agree. I'm glad that component is going to be a part of the deal, and I'm glad you guys were able to pull it off. It sounds like something that is good for our city, more development, more job opportunities. So I'm in favor of it, and I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilhoit?
Sure. I think Chair Andrews stated it's nice to see how nimble PDC can still be. And I know we hear that a lot. It takes time to bring projects like this to fruition, and this is a nice example of people putting their heads together and bringing a project that has a lot of significant economic value to the entire neighborhood and to the city of Portland. So I'm happy to see that. I just had a couple of questions, and I don't know if this is a proper question or not. Who exactly is Pearl Hotel Investors?
It's an LLC that William Dame Company is creating.
Okay, I wasn't, and I thought so, but I wasn't quite sure. But I just wanted to ask that question. And when we look at the project, and it has so many positives, is there anything negative? Could someone say, well, something is always getting displaced? And I think that was the issue with the housing, and that came up some time back when this first was put on the table. Could someone legitimately argue that something is getting displaced?
Commissioner, in all good confidence, I would say that the housing is measurably better today than it's no worse off, if not better.
Mm-hmm. So the 30 units for ownership will still exist, and then there's additional 30 for rent or ownership?
Well, it's a 30-unit obligation that's identified as rental at the 120% MFI. Mm-hmm. So it's a 30 units, not 60 units.
Okay, and that's what it says increased by 30 for rent units, and that's what I wanted to be clear on. I thought it was a 30 number that was being carried forward, but the way it's worded, someone might read it and think that it is 60, but it is 30. And the ratio, I was just curious, when you look at it, it's going to be a 225-room hotel, 100 spaces. Is there some magic to that?
Well, I think the kind of the standard capture rate per looking at the number of rooms in a hotel is somewhere between 35 and 40%. So 100's maybe being a little more conservative on that end. So within the parking lease, there are some provisions on both sides to reduce the number of spaces in the future if they don't.
And that's what I was going to ask. What just hypothetically, what would cause us to want to reduce the numbers? Is there anything we can think of, just development in the area causing greater demand? Is that
development in the area?
That's
right.
Pretty much it.
Yeah. We thought about through, as a developer, you always like the right to cancel these things if you want to redevelop the project, but we knew they could not live without it. There is a provision in there for later down the line, but I doubt very much that you would do a 10th in Washington and drop it and build something there. It would just cost way too much money.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and the last two questions I had. The comment about PDC's right to re-enter and resell the property terminating as of the date the building permit is issued. From a layman's perspective, what does that really mean?
So PDC typically in their DDAs has a right that if a project is not completed, it started, that PDC has the ability to go back into the property, to take the property back, complete the project, or go back and sell the property. One of the things that we did work with the developer is that once they get their building permit, PDC's rights to re-enter the property no longer exist. And part of that has to do with the financing they're getting, which is getting the EB-5 financing, which is foreign investors, and so that would provide that clarity to their investors.
And at the point that someone is pursuing a building permit, how far into that development process is the project determined to be? And that was really what I was getting at. If someone reads this and they say, well, can they just go down and get a building permit today? I know the answer is no, but I want it to be clear that that's well into the process.
So to get a building permit, they pretty much need 100% construction documents. So they will have spent far in excess of $1 million in their design to get the building permit.
Okay, and the 4 10-year renewals tied to the management, we're going to look at a 50-year lockup with the potential to reduce the number of spaces if we have other projects in the area that would demand the parking spaces. So, okay, I just wanted to be clear, and I think it's good for people to hear and understand some of those points because we talk about them and we don't always necessarily put them out there for the public. But I think, once again, the economic benefits and the timeliness of this project, given where we are in the economy, these are the types of things we like to see go forward. So congratulations and thanks for all the effort.
Thank you. So could I get a motion to approve Resolution 6909 and Resolution 6910?
So moved, and I think it's worth saying also that we've got a letter from Housing that's very much in support of this project, and I think the public would want to know that as well. So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thanks.
Good job. The next item is an information item. Update on the Greater Portland's Metropolitan Export Initiative, Report 1174. Chris Harder, who I was alluding to earlier as being another North Carolina connection. Welcome.
Let me just correct that. I'm from Portland. I happen to live in North Carolina.
Happen to live, yeah. Well, there was close enough in my book. Before you get started, I would just say I actually had the opportunity to kind of participate in the kickoff of the work for this item. I represented the city at the Quinton initiative in Chicago in June, I think it was. Spent a few days in the Windy City. It wasn't windy. It was very rainy, as a matter of fact. I didn't get out of the hotel. It was that wet for 2 days. And it was quite an event. And actually, I got patted on the back for the agency's economic development strategy, the cluster strategy around regional cluster firms where we have competitive advantage, and in traded sector industries is being seen as kind of the leading way to go all across the country. And it was interesting to talk to folks from everywhere. I think there was 2,000 people there. So I did say 69. Excuse me. I did say both. You'll see the tape.
Wasn't sure.
So I know they have been working hard to actually create the initiative. You had an opportunity to present it, and let's hear about it.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners, and Executive Director Quinton. As you know, the Brookings Metro Export Initiative was established in response to the Obama administration's export initiative to double exports within 5 years. And Portland was selected as one of the cities, and Chris is going to talk about it in more detail. I think the important part that I wanted to highlight for you all is that this is an important part of our economic development strategy. It's really a new initiative that's going to be implemented. We have not had an export strategy in the past that was strategic. It was often done on an ad hoc basis, so this is really going to provide a focus and a plan for aggressively reaching out to companies in our target industry clusters to help them enter, expand, and expand into new global markets and really help support job growth in the region, revenues for those companies, and better position Portland as a global leader. I think the other thing I want to call out is it's not just about exporting materials, products, widgets, and those types of things, but it's also really about exporting our innovation in Portland. And we have a lot of talented people here, and we really want to further that and send that message out to the broader community. While Portland is leading and driving this, I want to recognize Chris Harder because he has been putting tremendous effort into driving this initiative on behalf of the city, but also working with our partners throughout the region. And he and Patrick, too, and the team have gotten tremendous recognition from the Brookings as well as the other cohort cities. So I really want to commend him on his work. And with that, I'll turn it over to Krista to provide more detail about the plan and where we're going with it.
Sure. First off, Commission members, Chair Andrews, Executive Director Quinton, appreciate the opportunity to present this. We've been working on it for a while, and Chair Andrews, I know you know probably are a little bit more up to speed on it, but hope this is a good opportunity to kind of highlight what we've been working on and where we're going to go in the future. As Jennifer mentioned, we are one of 4 cities selected by Brookings to develop metro export and plans or strategies. One of the key findings from Brookings, who has been looking at this issue for a while, is that metro regions drive a lot of our economic growth, yet there were no strategies around how metro regions export. And then when they also found that the vast majority of the data, if not all of it, comes at the federal state level. So if you're working from a metro level, you're somewhat disadvantaged. So they've been working to correct this. Part of it is this pilot program, and we are thrilled to be one of the 4 cities as part of their program. The strategy has a couple components. The first is a market assessment, which we worked on over the summer, which included secondary data analysis. This was new data brought to us by Brookings, which inventoried our economy, looked for strengths and disadvantages. So that was a key part. We interviewed over 40 organizations, 30 private sector firms, 10 economic development and export service provider firms. And then in partnership with the PBA, we developed a survey and got 250 responses to that survey on exports. So multifaceted effort to really assess our region in terms of exports. I'm going to talk a lot about, I'm going to highlight some of our key findings. I'm going to talk about, we have 4 strategies within the export plan. And then at the end, highlight some ongoing efforts around capturing some of the key policy recommendations or issues that we may want to tackle as a region to continue to promote exports. And then finally, implementation. That the devil's always in the detail, and we have a lot of those and continue to develop them. So an update on that. To really piggyback off of what Chair Andrews said, a big reason for why we were selected has to do with our economic development strategy. We've long been known in this region for our sustainability efforts, our livability. We're continuously ranked as one of the top livable regions. But our renewed emphasis on job creation and economic competitiveness over the last 2 years is Brookings will tell you that's why we were selected as one of the 4 pilots. So we definitely in our application came very strong and showed a cohesive economic development strategy and something that separated us. So I think that goes to all the work that we've been doing over the last 2 years. The key part of that are our target clusters, and as it's highlighted in our economic development strategy, we make a link between growing clusters, promoting innovation, and exports. And until now, I think we've been much further along on our cluster strategy. I presented last month on our entrepreneurship and innovation strategy. So this is kind of the third piece of it, and trying to get this up to speed on the other 2. So a little bit about kind of what's the team involved right now in getting this strategy developed. It's currently being led, or the bulk of the work, out of PDC in the city. That's in part because we were the entity that applied for it. So, kind of put us in the leadership position there. Although we have a working group, and as you can see from the slide, key organizations around the region: Port of Portland, PBA, Metro, Business Oregon, our State Department of Commerce. We have federal folks in our Foreign Commercial Service. We have Southwest Washington, and then universities represented. We've been meeting fairly regularly, a lot of hours to develop this strategy. So while we may be leading it out of PDC and the city of Portland, we have a lot of help in this. And then obviously we're able to pull in key partners on specific issues. This isn't even an exhaustive list, but for purposes of the slide, just highlighting some of them. So into the market assessment, that we conducted over the summer, which is really driving our 4 points of the strategy. One of the big findings we learned was we are a very competitive exporting region, depending on certain metrics. Exports as a percentage of overall gross metropolitan product, we rank second in the country. That being said, we are dominated in exports by one sector, computer and electronic product manufacturing. This is Intel, this is TriQuint, and they make up 70% or 60% of our export value. Second key finding is another large chunk of our exports come from heavy manufacturing, metals, and transportation equipment. It makes up 12% of our exports currently, although one of the key findings from our interviews was that many of these firms, or a good chunk of these firms, are what we term as accidental exporters or passive exporters, in the sense that they may have secured an export contract but don't necessarily have a proactive strategy to access more markets going forward. Third big key finding, and this shouldn't come as a big surprise, but we are dominated by small and medium-sized businesses, the majority of which do not export. One of the statistic up there is of those surveyed, which for the majority of those 250 firms were small and medium-sized, 89% of them hadn't accessed any export services or really looked into accessing it. So we see that as a big growth opportunity for us. And then finally, I think our reputation in clean technology, green and sustainability is well known. Oregon itself ranks second in terms of per capita clean tech jobs. We see this as an opportunity to continue to leverage our strength there and take what we're known for overseas and help translate that into more exports for this particular area of our economy. So those are the key findings from a variety of ways of assessing our economy on exports. Before I get into the actual strategies themselves, we do have some basic objectives: create and retain export-related jobs. As you'll see in some of the strategies, there's a need for us to do a better job of promoting an export culture. Too many of our firms don't see it as an area for them to grow their business. Of course, we want more industries exporting, and we want to access more markets. And we are a leading export metro region right now, so we see a key objective is to maintain that leadership position nationally. So jumping right in to the export strategies, the first one is what we call leverage primary exporters. Again, this is capitalizing on the significant percent of exports that come out of our semiconductor industry. Again, more than half of our exports and 2/3 of our growth come from here. The nuance of this strategy, however, is in working with Intel, we're probably not going to provide them any value on how to export. They're doing pretty well themselves. Same with TriQuint, same with these other firms. But we do see an opportunity for us to gain higher multiplier impacts from them through a supply chain strategy. So this is a targeted recruitment strategy to bring key suppliers of Intel, of TriQuint, of this industry to the region. It is also a strategy to help work with our existing firms here to help them enter that supply chain. So as this industry grows, as this industry exports more, we bring more wealth and economic value back to our region. And of course, along with this is continuing to make sure that our region is an attractive place for these firms to locate. I think we're doing a pretty good job, but there's always opportunities to expand on that. And whether through strong account management with some of these companies, we think there's significant opportunity here around secondary exports and location advantages. Second strategy is what we call catalyze under exporters. Here we intend to work with a select group of advanced manufacturing firms, or at least at this point we're targeting advanced manufacturing. I think we have in mind, we have in mind approximately 10 firms. Again, these are firms that are exporting. So the benefit is they're not necessarily fearful of it, but they're not necessarily proactive in reaching new markets. So we really want to focus strong account management. We want to provide in-depth market analysis. And something that actually came out of our interviews is the desire for some of these firms to engage in peer-to-peer mentoring. Certain firms working with what we'll call proactive exporters and learning from them, taking advantage of some of their current trade resources, facilities overseas, relationships, et cetera. And again, there's an opportunity in this strategy. As you guys are aware, we were awarded one of the Jobs Accelerator grants, where a component of that is working with our traditional manufacturing industries and helping to do some product diversification, get them in growth industries that may be more export ready or exports may be a growth opportunity for them. So this is, again, working with a select number of firms and providing strong account management with them. Third area is a little bit of a catch-all, but it's a very important one, going to the statistic of most of our firms are not exporting or considering exporting at the moment. So there's an opportunity here to move the export dial. Part of this is promoting a culture of exports. We need to do a better job storytelling those firms that are. A key component of our promoting the export culture is actually integrating exports into our economic development activities, our business retention activities. When we go out and meet with firms, I don't think in the past we've talked to them a lot about exports. So this is an opportunity to do that and to add to our tool set as we engage with businesses. Part of it is that there's a roadmap here. Many of the firms don't know who to call on to help with exports, what types of services there are out there. We see an opportunity using technology to provide a clear roadmap. I know we use the analogy sometimes of a TurboTax tool that if you're a company, you answer a series of questions about where you are in terms of exporting, and it will help guide you to the appropriate resources. We have a good number of resources in our community that are positively reviewed when they're accessed, but currently we're not getting enough companies to them. And then there's other more specific endeavors here, export accelerator, boot camps, intensive work with, again, maybe a select number of small businesses to get them export ready. And then finally, our fourth strategy is really capitalizing on our global reputation around clean technology, our sustainability efforts. We have a brand here. When our dignitaries go overseas, and Chair Andrews, I know you've been overseas, we often get asked about what we've done here in Portland related to sustainability, some of our progressive land use policies, transportation policies, and we've never really had a consistent place to point them. We want to not only have a consistent place to point them, but then also to show that we've looked at comprehensive solutions that are built around industries, companies, and products, and help some of our maybe less well-known companies use our global reputation to export overseas and help provide solutions globally. Again, there's an element here of making sure these companies and their products are marketed to overseas opportunities. There's a travel and tourism component. Was just in the mayor's office yesterday, and we had some planning folks from I believe it was Japan there, wanting to know how we leaders in this area. So they're coming here, and tourism is actually counted as an export. When they spend here, that's an export. So whether it's conferences, whether it's meetings, people traveling here to learn how we've done this positively, I think that's a great opportunity to increase our export metrics. Outside of the actual strategy, there are a lot of policy issues around trade and exports. We have the opportunity, using Brookings, to develop a policy memo that can be used to kind of talk to federal agencies and to talk about issues. If we're going to increase exports, for example, we need to make sure that our foreign commercial services are funded adequately to handle increased demand. We had some opportunity to do this when we were in D.C. in November, and a lot of these ideas that came from the 4 cohort cities were positively viewed. We do have additional opportunities to do this, as well as at the state and local level, an area that we're just starting to get into and really see the policy discussions at the state and local level being much more ongoing, because a lot of these issues are long-term in nature and are going to require some creative thinking. So implementation, I think we showed earlier on a diagram of how the strategy is being developed, and we have a similar diagram for what we're viewing as how we see the strategy to be implemented. Greater Portland, Inc., as the new regional economic development organization, is in a good position to coordinate and project manage this for our region. Obviously, we have key organizations, including PDC, involved in the implementation, and the bulk of the actual implementation activity will fall to these organizations, but there is benefit in having the regional voice in bringing people together. One of our goals is coming up is to develop a likely similar group that's been on our working committee to develop the strategy, but similar players to have a regional implementation team. We also see the need at a principal level, your level, to be on a Metro Advisory Committee to help shape some of the long-term discussions around exports, trade issues in general, to help guide the strategy down the line. And I'll get into the funding a little bit more in implementation. Oh, sorry, didn't click. Regional Implementation Team, Metro Advisory Committee, and funding. Going forward, so what are the next steps? This is similar to what we presented in November, and over the last month and through December and January, we are getting into significant detail of how you actually implement this. It is working with actual organizations. So when we say we want to provide account management to an advanced manufacturing firm, we are now talking to Portland State MBA program about using their resources and slotting them in to assign students and faculty to specific companies. So we're trying to get down to the level of organizations, roles and responsibilities, and making sure everyone's clear kind of what the next steps are. We're obviously, as is the case today, Patrick, right before this meeting, presented to the port directors. We're going around the region to boards and commissions to making sure that they're all aware of this. A lot of us are doing this internally in our own organizations, but there is value in making sure a lot of the regional boards and commissions are up to speed. We have a public rollout planned for February 15th, so certainly we'll make sure, if you're not already, that the invite goes out to the commission members. This is going to be held during one of PBA's breakfast forums. Brookings is flying out. I've heard rumors that the Secretary of Commerce may fly out, but they're going to make a big splash around the public rollouts of these strategies and implementation plans. They're timing it. They're doing a West Coast swing, so LA is going on the 13th or the 15th. Syracuse and Minneapolis are the week after. Obviously, this is another chance for us to get this in the forefront of our leaders here in the region. A key piece of that, as well as going forward, is fundraising. So as we talk about positioning Greater Portland, Inc. To take on a project management role, that may mean an additional staff, or to fund some of the efforts working from the public sector side, but also fundraising from our private sector organizations will be key to implementing this. So that's an ongoing element that we'll work on till February 15th and certainly after February 15th. So with that, I will, if anyone has any questions, I can open it up for that.
Well, I'll start. I guess I think this is a very exciting and logical addition to the tool chest that we've been using to try to create more jobs and expand the economy in the region. I liken it a bit to really the cluster strategy, and if you step back and look at it, we are one of the leading regions for export strategy, but we have a huge number of organizations that don't even think about it. that it's never been part of their business. What we're trying to do is bring them a new market, make it easy for them to bring a new market. I think one of the comments you made in another presentation was we found a lot of times companies were exporting almost by accident, that they had created a relationship with somebody in a European country or an Asian company and made the connection and was exporting, but had never thought about trying to expand that. On the other side of the coin, we have people who know how to do it. We know how to ship chips, we know how to ship grain, we know how to ship logs, we know how to ship trucks, we know how to ship lots of things. So there's all sorts of folks on the logistics side that can get this done from here very easily. So just by connecting the folks who are creating these things and showing them that there is a market for it, I think that there's a really good opportunity to expand the business climate. The supply chain thing is kind of interesting too to me, in that it's one of these later stages in our economic development strategy as we've gotten through the clusters, but it really makes a lot of sense if you think about it. And when I was out at Daimler, when they were announcing the new jobs, one of the questions was, what kind of supply chain do you have regionally, and what can we do to help that process? And what was interesting there is most of their local supply chain has disappeared, because as they went from 3 shifts to 1 shift, there wasn't enough supply necessary for a bunch of these companies, and a bunch of them went out of business. Now they're putting on another shift, 360 jobs, but these businesses have to decide whether they want to tool up, spend the money to create staff, et cetera, for an industry that is just starting up on the second. So there's a good opportunity there, but it's more difficult. On the other side of the coin, you have somebody like Intel, who isn't going to go from 3 shifts to 1 shift, is going to be very, very steady, but also has really good connections and huge suppliers that they've worked with forever. So, I mean, just kind of some of the fun stuff that comes out of the supply chain side of it, which is great growth opportunities. So, I think you were talking about the February 15th event. This particular initiative, I think, has the opportunity to put Portland on the map in a number of ways. And I think when we were in Washington, D.C., actually, MBank, Department of Commerce, there were several folks who were talking about perhaps doing events in Portland showcasing how their tool basket can fit within this export initiative. So I think we're going to get a lot of very positive public relations publicity out of this.
Just to add to that, so part of the reason for the February is I believe it's the anniversary of Obama's national export initiative, maybe the 2-year anniversary. So while we're certainly going to make a big play of it here regionally, because we're one of the pilot cities, this is a national thing that Brookings is going to roll out. So we are going to be a model for other cities, and so it'll extend beyond our region in that terms.
Great, thank you. I'm going to let Commissioner Will Hoyt start, and I saw his pen go down when we talked about fundraising, so I'm going to guess he's got some how much is this going to cost kind of questions.
No, I wasn't going to ask that. Not directly, at least. No, this is great because it does tie in directly to our cluster focus, and it's a little different because historically we've looked at recruiting companies. This is kind of the reverse of that. We're trying to grow local companies by increasing demand for their product, and I think that's a very good approach and a different approach. So we're looking at growth through several different avenues, and this one is very promising, albeit challenging. And the question I have is, when we look at the National Export Initiative, we're looking at trying to double exports in 5 years. Mm-hmm. And right now this is a study with an implementation plan. Where do we get to the point where we say we've done the homework and this is what we're going to do as our plan?
February 15th.
So it is that date, yep.
Huh? So February 15th.
Pretty quick.
Yeah. We'll be rolling out the strategy. I could have brought along for visuals, spreadsheets of implementation, deliverables and tasks, organizations that we're talking with right now to take it, roles and responsibilities, funding. So we'll certainly have a a phase one to roll out with our strategy in terms of implementation. Some of the elements we talked about are longer term, and while we're certainly tied, in trying to help the president achieve his 5-year goal, I think this extends beyond just that initiative. I think this can be something over time can be tailored and improved, and so we definitely plan to have implementation on February 15th.
Okay. And now I'll go to Chair Andrews' question. Given where we are today, any idea what that funding target looks like?
I think we have some idea in terms of GPI, which we're talking about taking a project management role and their need to hire a staff. I don't know if we know the exact dollars there. And I think we have some sense around certain deliverables in the sense of a roadmap, what a website may cost. I think one of the benefits of what we've tried to do is leverage existing economic development work. So whether we're talking meeting, account management with these under exporters or small businesses, a lot of it's a function of incorporating it into what we already do and making maybe a priority or one of the priorities of what we already do. So in that sense, certainly I think there's an element of cost to it, but it's also an element of prioritizing how we do it, some of our economic development and business development activities. So not everything has to come with a dollar. It can be in kind per se.
I know the question he's answering because I know Charles.
Yeah. I was going to say
you need to raise about $75,000.
Okay. I was going to say he's really.
The idea.
I'll let Terry Andrews say the dollar.
Okay. All right. I say I heard you were really good, and you answered my question without answering my question. So I say he's really good because it felt like he gave me the answer. But no, I understand it's hard to put our arms around that. But when we look at investing, and that's what we're doing, we're going to have to invest in some people, and we're going to have consistent thrust behind this effort for it to turn into anything. So 75 doesn't sound like a big number.
That would allow Greater Portland Inc. to hire the staff that they need and get the process started. It will evolve from there, but I think what Chris is saying is a lot of what will evolve from there will just be shifting of existing resources, just depending on what's effective. So it won't be a lot, but the initial new is that we would be hoped from getting from the private sector, frankly, is that range.
I think the other piece I'd add is that that coordinating position at GPI is going to be augmented by economic development partners. So within PDC, our staff focused on target industry clusters will really be focusing on implementation plans. So that's the resources we'll be bringing to the table. And the other economic development agencies throughout the region are also going to be helping support the plan. So I think, there's a lot of in-kind that Chris was leveraged through our expertise and our relationships with clusters.
And Patrick, you were leaning, I didn't want to interrupt you.
I think Chair Andrews basically answered. I do think that there could be a second level of funding, more programmatic support that gets into if we do have websites or we do have to enhance the service offerings for companies. But I think 75 is, as Chair Andrews said, is the number that gets Greater Portland positioned to support this in the proper way, mainly with staff, but some other dollars.
Okay.
And I do think Greater Portland is funded through a combination of public and private entities, investors, and we're one of them. Through the city, PDC is one of them, and so I think it's going to come from a combination of those existing investors and maybe some new investors. So,
and I get the sense this isn't, though none of us in the region would do this when we're talking about recruiting, fighting for getting that business in my neighborhood. This is something that's exciting and an opportunity to everyone in the region because we're just trying to get those outside of our borders to buy products produced in the border. So the question is, we're not, or are we saying, well, this is a competition for recruitment versus exporting? And that's why the investment and the resources are going to have people focus specifically on this export initiative, and we're still going to have people focusing on the recruitment initiative.
I mean, we would expect that there would be companies across the region that would be export ready or, in this under exporter category that would benefit from this. So they could be Southwest Washington, they could be in, Clackamas County, they could be in Portland. And I think that's where the in-kind comes in, is that the organizations that are already supporting those companies would have this set of services to offer to help their companies export. And we're going to need those organizations to help us identify the companies in the first place, to say these are the companies that we think are ready for exporting.
And the last question I have, just a rough process identifying the international markets that we might go after, in some type of priority order. How do we do that? Are we looking at the clusters and saying we already have this concentration? Who wants what we have already, or what are we doing in that regard?
My answer, and I'll let Patrick add to it, is I think we have target clusters, so we can start with those industries, and we've done a little bit of it, but identify what are the best growth markets for our target clusters. It is certainly part of when we're talking about whether it's this select 10 advanced manufacturing firms. It may be they may all have the same market individually. They may have different markets. And the same when we talk about small and medium-sized businesses. I think we have a good sense of how to focus some of those efforts given our clusters and the analysis. This is one thing that Brookings, and part of this, which I didn't get into, is it's a better relationship with entities like international trade, so that provide data as well that will help us make those types of market analysis that we haven't been doing.
This isn't new. I mean, we're not the first ones to tackle this. Companies and other public agencies, probably federal agencies, have done this kind of analysis on where the market opportunities are. So I think we're just taking existing services and data and making them available to companies who either don't have the time or the money to buy it or access it. But the data's out there to analyze what markets could use this kind of steel, or what markets could use these kind of products. I think that's actually, there's a lot of people who do that already. Most companies just don't have access to those kind of services.
And have we received, or do we anticipate any pushback? Say I'm a company, I'm already good at it, and now you're going to make it easier for some of my competitors. We went through this when we were looking at the clusters, bringing all those companies together. Are we going to need to go through a similar type of process, or have we done it?
From some of the interviews, so I don't necessarily want to generalize, companies, particularly, this goes to the peer mentoring idea. Companies want to work with other companies. There's value in a group of companies going in a market together. It puts Portland a little bit more on the map. They can, share ideas, strategies, potentially resources and facilities, all that kind of stuff. I'm sure they're direct competitor type issues, but we actually heard the opposite from those that we talked to.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. I didn't mean to take up so much time. It's interesting.
No problem. Commissioner Dixon? She's still with us? She's off? Okay.
Put her in a coma with my questions. She hung up on us.
No, I understand. Commissioner Mullis?
No, it is very interesting and good questions. It's good to flesh it out. It was really an honor to be one of the 4 cities chosen, and I think it's going to pay great dividends in the long run. And I know that I'm sure I've heard before that jobs in these traded sectors pay higher than the median average. So, that's another component that I don't think we hit on today, that the overwhelming majority of jobs that would be created by this initiative, I think, are going to be high-wage jobs, which is just the kind of jobs that we want to be creating in this region. So I think that's another good benefit. So I really look forward to seeing it roll out. I think it's been well thought out so far. I think just coming directly from the Obama administration, how are we going to grow the economy? It's a great idea. We've got a lot of good building blocks in place. Let's figure out how to sell more of our stuff overseas. So I think it's a great initiative, and I think it's a great opportunity for Portland and our region. So I'll look forward to continuing to see it unroll.
Patrick, anything else?
Well, I just want to repeat the kudos. I want to thank Chris and Jennifer and the team and on all the great work, and I appreciate being able to participate as well. And it is gratifying to get the kind of feedback that we received in Washington and the other places where we presented it. We don't do good work just, to get the kudos. We want the real benefits that come from it, but it obviously takes good strategy work in order to have good results, and I think that's been a characteristic of the economic development strategy, our neighborhood economic development strategy, the entrepreneurship work, and now this. And so I do think we have a great base of strategic documents that will allow us to really produce results, and has already produced results. So I just want to thank you guys for all the work.
Great job. Thank you. Okay, next item. Last item on today's agenda is also an informational item, Rose Quarter Development Project briefing, Mr. Lou Bowers and Mr. Kevin Brake. And I'll start by reminding the Commission that a little over a year ago I got involved in this quite deeply. Actually, it started when the Mayor's Office asked Charles and I to take a look at the finalists for Rose Quarter renovation, and we worked through that process. But I got involved because I could see people being frustrated with what I was calling the three-legged stool at the time. We had the north-northeast expansion, which has resulted in the modification of interstate. We had the Rose Quarter redevelopment, and at the time the Blazer organization still held the rights to that. And we had the discussion around the Veterans Memorial Coliseum. And each one of those different initiatives had different stakeholder groups, and each one of those stakeholder groups, sort of rightly so, wanted the answers for the other two before they would provide an answer for the third. And so these things kept getting in front of each other. And so over the last 12 months, two of the really good things that we've been able to do is finalize the North-North Interstate discussion and make the changes to that. It was not a perfect solution because we left out the question of whether a piece of the Rose Quarter will be in or will be out, but it was time to make that decision, and I think it was the right one to make, and we're moving forward in that district. The Blazers, I think, in a very nice fashion, gave up their development rights as the last couple of projects that they were looking at went away. And that provided a little bit more clarity in terms of what the future of Rose District is going to look like, at least from a planning standpoint. So we have that process going forward. And the decision to actually renovate Veterans Memorial Coliseum was made, and the name change from Memorial to Veterans Memorial, I think, showed that the city is very serious about getting this done and getting it done in a right manner. And I would point out that the indecision over what was going to happen with Veterans Memorial Coliseum put a great cloud over entire redevelopment of almost convention center district to the Blanchard, not knowing whether this was going to be a baseball stadium or a coliseum or some other kind of development made it very difficult for anybody to take a look at the land adjacently and say, is what I want to do make sense? So this is helping with that effort as well. I want to thank these two gentlemen and also Peter Englander for a tremendous amount of time and effort that's going into it. I think what you're going to hear today will impress you in terms of how complex it is. It looks like it's pretty simple. We're going to fix up an old Coliseum, but there are a lot of moving pieces to it. We're making very good progress. So with that, thank you.
Yeah. So thank you, Chair Andrews, Commissioners, Patrick. So today I'm going to provide for you an overview of the Rose Quarter Development Project and the Veterans Memorial Coliseum renovation. I'm going to cover the policy context for the major project implementation, an update on the Rose Quarter Stakeholder Advisory Committee accomplishments, the progress report on the Veterans Memorial Coliseum renovation, the district energy feasibility study, which is currently underway, the Rose Quarter district plan, and next steps. Lou Bowers is going to provide for you the policy context under which these projects are being implemented. Chair and Commissioners, I think the Chair did a good job of relating some of the winding road that we have been on. And although it can sometimes be a frustrating process, over the last 3 years we really have made quite a bit of progress in pinning down some of the variables here. Now the policy context has these components.
We are very much involved in the Central Portland 2035 plan and the various quadrant implementations of that. And this, of course, is in the northeast quadrant. So this is involved in the whole area of the Rose Garden and the whole area of Broadway, Weidler, and that whole quadrant of the city. That is closely related to ODOT's I-5 interchange planning. What are we going to do with that interchange? As many people know, this is really the choke point on the I-5 corridor from here to the I-5 bridge, and then in conjunction with a possible new crossing, there's plans for changing this. So we have almost as innovative as anything else we've done. We've got ODOT working with us on the planning implications of their transportation designs. So BPS gets full credit for taking the lead on that, and we've been coordinating that. The other element that is also guiding our work here is the Climate Action Plan, which again was started by BPS, but it has calls for some pretty significant reduction in carbon over a 10-year period, then over a 30-year period. That has caused us, among other things, to implement a Lloyd Eco District, which is working with the property owners in Lloyd to look at the possibility of overlapping energy, wastewater, stormwater, transportation, food waste, various kinds of systems to see what a more sustainable neighborhood or district would look like. Lloyd has taken its infrastructure that it created around the transportation management and has now moved into the sustainability. So they have created a group, they've hired their own staff person, and we're using the VMC and the Rose Quarter District Energy as a pilot for that and then connecting that up into Lloyd. So we're starting with energy, although we're also, Kevin might also touch on some of the water ideas. So we're doing a single building, the Veterans Memorial Coliseum, but with that we are furthering a number of these larger policy initiatives that are important to the city and also to the commission. With that, I'll ask Kevin to do the details.
Great. Thanks, Lou. So the Rose Quarter Stakeholder Advisory Committee was engaged 2 years ago as of November. It's a diverse committee comprised of 31 members with the mayor as chair. They, in the process of their work, determined a future for the Veterans Memorial Coliseum with private capital investment after over a decade of doubt considering 96 concepts submitted by the public. They established a framework for community benefits to be realized through the Veterans Memorial Coliseum renovation, and they created an implementation-focused plan to inform the Central Portland 2035 and I-5 planning. They also explored the opportunity to create an athletics and outdoor gear industry cluster geographic hub within the Rose Quarter. They oversaw significant private development interest within the district, and we are now pursuing additional outreach opportunities to notify community groups of the progress on the Veterans Memorial Coliseum and space use opportunities within the building. City Council renamed the Memorial Coliseum to the Veterans Memorial Coliseum and affirmed the commitment to retain the building in October of 2010. The Coliseum currently hosts over 500,000 visitors a year, and with a strong focus on amateur athletics and community events. Portland has a unique advantage with two complementary facilities within close proximity to one another, retaining the ability to host events with requirements for two arenas such as the Davis Cup. The building was listed on the National Register in 2010, and retaining elements of the bowl and the box became key criteria for redevelopment. The Portland Winterhawks, Portland Arena Management, the Office of Management and Finance, and PDC are engaged in negotiations to finalize a redevelopment agreement, the term sheet for which was approved by City Council on November 17th of this year. Private investment was a key criteria for the redevelopment of the Veterans Memorial Coliseum, and the Winterhawks have stepped up to play that role. The Veterans Memorial renovation and enhancement is gaining widespread support from the veterans community, with potential for private donations to further enhance that component of the project. If district energy is deemed feasible, this could shift significant capital to other unfunded priorities, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. Schematic design is going to be complete on December 23rd, which will increase confidence in cost estimates significantly and allow the team to finalize the project scope moving forward. So project funding for the Veterans Memorial Coliseum renovation is comprised of PDC TIF, tax increment financing in the amount of $17.1 million, private capital in the range of $10 million, historic tax credits, around $4 million, possibly more, and energy incentives from Energy Trust of Oregon and Clean Energy Works, around $575,000. Total sources for the project are around $31 million. The redevelopment agreement is the legal agreement to confirm scope, roles, and investment levels in the VMC. All parties have expressed common goals and offered strategies to implement the project, as well as committed significant staff time to formulate the project. Portland Arena Management is assuming the role of construction manager through a sole source agreement that's going to City Council on December 14th. And they're also assuming cost overrun risk, which is a significant role for them to play in this big of a project. The Winterhawks are, as I said, investing capital in the building, but they've also engaged a landscape architect to help further the Memorial Gardens landscape design and get additional support from the veterans community on that aspect of the project. The schedule for the redevelopment agreement is aggressive due to a limited window of opportunity to fully close the facility, long lead time for many vendor items, and the Winterhawks' desire to have a grand opening in their 2012 season. The Shared Thermal Energy System, or District Energy System, RFQ, the request for qualifications, was issued concurrently with the architectural engineering contract request for proposals for the building. This was done in order to leverage this public investment to achieve multiple goals. The facilities being considered for the district energy system comprise over 1.2 million square feet, and the system would tie them all together for heating and cooling services by one provider. This is a critical step towards the implementation of the Lloyd Eco-District strategy and represents a significant business development opportunity in Portland for Corex and McKinstry. The feasibility study results are due this Tuesday on the 20th, and this opportunity may shift significant capital to other improvements that are currently unfunded within the Veterans Memorial Coliseum project. The Rose Quarter. Yep.
I'm not sure that may be code. I think what that means is right now the budget has a couple $1 million for an independent heating and cooling plant in the VMC. If this joint system can work, that $2 million, say, could be put to other uses in the VMC, and whatever the heating cooling setup would be owned by Corex and would kind of be off balance sheet from the VMC. Yep. That's roughly how it could work. We don't know that that's for sure, but that's what it could look like and allow us to buy more spectator benefits or more systems improvements rather than an independent heating and cooling system.
And just further on that, what's being considered currently is utilizing all of the existing heating and cooling equipment within the buildings. There's, at this point, doesn't seem to be a need to build a new plant. It's actually about making the systems redundant and tying the buildings together. So it's looking good at this point. So the Rose Quarter District Plan was completed by Mike McCulloch, and the Rose Quarter Stakeholder Advisory Committee had significant involvement in updating that plan and providing input from their perspectives. It's an implementation-focused plan that's going to inform the 2035 plan, and a series of recommendations on height, zoning, FAR, and other potential changes in the zoning code are being implemented to the 2035 plan to facilitate private investment within the Rose Quarter. The review draft will be available on the Rose Quarter Development website in early January. So next steps on this project, we are aiming to have a veterans focus group to allow input on the Veterans Memorial Gardens aspect of the project on January 10th, and that date is to be confirmed. The Office of Management and Finance PDC intergovernmental agreement will be coming to this board on January 11th, and that's going to confirm PDC's tax increment financing into the project and confirm our roles moving forward. The redevelopment agreement is going to City Council on January 12th. And for our sort of high-level construction schedule, we're aiming for vendor item construction. These are things like seats, scoreboards, things that are not general contractor installed, but individual vendor items to start as early as February or March this year. And full closure of the facility to occur between June and October of next year. So in closing, I'd like to highlight that this project represents the highly coordinated efforts of our city bureaus and private partners, as evidenced by the iterative nature of the multiple planning and project implementation efforts underway. I'd like to thank Chair Andrews, Mayor Adams, Lou Bowers, Peter Englander, and Patrick Quinton for the unparalleled leadership and direction in navigating this project to this point.
Thank you. I don't think you got to what maybe I missed it. I'm so used to looking at this now. The plan is to get to City Council with a redevelopment agreement in mid-January, which would provide the time frame for us to be able to purchase or put deposits down on the advanced items that are necessary, which is basically the seating area and some of the equipment that they need for the ice skating rink. Yep. One of the things that happens is we currently don't have an NHL regulation ice rink. It's not the right size. It's completely shot. It's worn out. So you'd have to dig it up and build a new one. So as long as we're doing that, it's going to be an NHL-sized rink. Replacement of the seats, just as the replacement of the seats at Geldwin. If you've been in those seats, they're hard, they're skinny, they're pretty uncomfortable. It will bring the capacity down by about 3,000 seats, but they'll all be brand new. New scoreboards, new lighting, new signage. Some people have questioned as to whether we're doing enough, and my best answer is we still have the Winterhawks at the table putting $10 million of their own money in it, and if they saw it as just fixing up an old building, they wouldn't be investing their money. They see it as enhancing the fan experience and creating a place that others will attract more events and attract more people to the existing events. There were 400,000 people that attended events in the last fiscal year, so a lot of them are kind of below people's radar screen. They're not Blazers games, they're not Timbers games, but there's a lot of community events that go on, a lot of high school graduations, Rose Festival, religious events, kind of funky sporting events that, monster cars and other things that just don't get the high publicity. But the facility is very, very well used. The other thing that's terrific from my standpoint is that the Veterans Memorial Gardens will get an upgrade and the attention that they deserve as part of this. And there's some pretty interesting ideas as to what might happen with the old expo space that would enhance that as well. But that's an important piece to it, and it's moving forward well.
I would just reiterate one thing Kevin said. The schedule for this project is particularly challenging because of the window of when you can actually close it, because of the Winterhawk schedule. So we can't slip by a month or so, because then you miss that whole season, and then you can't do work until next year. So there's a lot of intricate planning to get things ready by that time to close it. So that is a firm date that we are hitting for, and that's why there may be some expedited processes to get approvals where we're pushing hard to get everybody negotiated, but that's the window we have to hit.
John, questions, comments?
No real questions, I guess, but I've seen this characterized at least once as just remodeling a hockey rink, and I think it's much more than that, and you've detailed what the Winterhawks are going to do, and that's great. But the public areas are going to be greatly enhanced. And like you say, I don't think people are aware of the number of different events that the public uses that facility for. So the public improvements that everybody's going to be able to use are great. And then the enhancement of the veterans area as well, and getting input from the veterans is very, very important. So those are two more items in addition to the upgrade for the Winterhawks that I think are very, very important. And then I think Chair Andrews spoke to it in his opening remarks. There has to be certainty to what that building is going to look like before anything else is going to happen there. So this is a key component in that, and I think it's a very good plan and tight timeline. I know we can make it, and I think that will accelerate further development in that area, which is really important. So thank you.
Charles?
Yeah, I don't have any questions either, but kind of reiterating what Commissioner Molis just talked about. If we're going to keep that building, we want to make it the best tribute to veterans and their families that we can. And on top of that, convert it to the highest economic generating asset that it can be. And I think that's really what we're talking about here. And there's a lot of detail and a lot of stress and time issues, but I think that's the goal. And as we get to that point, we'll create jobs in the interim. We'll create more jobs, hopefully, over the long term. But those two issues are critical, and it's, first and foremost, people recognize we're doing this for veterans and their families, but we're also converting or upgrading an asset that we think will be able to generate greater returns over a longer period of time. So thanks for the effort.
And I know Commissioner Dixon got a chance to get briefed on this week, but Commissioner Strauss was out of town, and I actually would be great if we could make sure that he gets briefed on both of these last two informational items rather than adding them to the next meeting. That would be great. Nothing else? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you.
That is the last of our agenda today, and this is the last meeting of 2011. Have a happy holiday.
We get to walk away with gifts, too.
Stay warm. I got cold.
Hey.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Press it hard enough, it'll turn.